Great. Hello, everyone. Today we have Brad Hennessie, the founder and CEO of NextStep Robotics. And the topic is actually getting started, all the details and why they matter. So just as a reminder, these health tech entrepreneur meetups are a space where we can try to learn how to apply the concepts that we learn from all the webinars and the seminars into actual real life. And it's also a chance for everyone to discuss their own experiences and share tips and advice. So if there's a topic you'd like to hear about in future, or if you'd like to speak on something that you've experienced, please let me know. And also, if you haven't already, let me know if you'd like to join our Slack workspace. So please keep sending feedback and share it with your network. Also, I would like to thank our sponsors. I'm gonna pull up a slide. There we go. Thank you to our sponsors. So if you'd like to sponsor our meetups, please let me know. You'll be advertised on our website and at every meetup this year. All right. Stop sharing. Great. So let's do our usual introduction. So I'm going to go down the list on my right on Zoom. And when I call your name, please unmute and let me know, let us know who you are, what you're working on, anything else, like if you're looking for help with something or if you can offer help with something, also let us know. So I will start. I'm Matteo. I'm founder and CEO of Neurosonics Medical. We're developing a novel ultrasound device for minimally invasive neurosurgery. I'm also the VP of Business Development at the Maryland Development Center. We are a startup studio focused on building health and medical technology companies. I'm going to skip Brad and I'll let him introduce himself later. Abe?
Hi, Jennifer, how are you?
Hi.
Yes, my name is Abraham. My name is Abraham Diaz. I'm currently an MBA student at Johns Hopkins Carey Business School, focusing on the medical sciences and specifically on medical devices technologies. That's who I am. Thanks.
Awesome. Anthony?
Sure. Hey guys, I'm Anthony Camerata. I actually have a company called Startup Cannon, which is a contract CFO and controller service. So while you guys might be on the tech side of this stuff, I'm on the finance and technical accounting side of growing businesses. Also, I just wanted to put out an ask. There's a company in my they're not in my portfolio. They're simply just someone in my in my ecosystem, and they're developing a sorry for taking time here, but they are developing an AI product for people to help survive cancer. It's an oncology product, and they're looking for someone in the oncology or SaaS space as a mentor. So if anyone knows anybody.
Awesome, thank you. I have Veronica.
Hey guys, actually I'm joining from Miami. I think this is probably my first time or maybe second time. I do a lot of consulting projects with the healthcare companies, and which are from startup all the way through Unilever and Johnson & Johnson. So we basically help them developing the products from MVP all the way through the deployment stage. Thank you guys.
Awesome, thank you. Chrissy?
Hi, I'm Chrissy. I'm a postdoc at Hopkins. We're working on microfluidic technologies that are extremely sensitive and can detect rare biomarkers. So I'm interested in seeing if we can take this technology for either cancer diagnostics or bacterial detection.
Very cool, thank you. Let's see, Idong?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm also joining for the first time. Out of Silver Spring, Maryland. I run the Ideas Group, which is a project management consultancy that's focused on life sciences and public health organizations.
Wonderful, welcome. Ellen?
Hi, I'm Ellen Murphy, and I'm actually joining from New England, so really loved the stories about Cape Cod. It's my first time here. I'm in charge of marketing at Block Snap Inc., which has been around for about 1.5 years. and a product for anesthesiologists and everyone else, all the other clinicians. I'm actually not going to go into a lot of detail because one of the founders is also here, and I'm going to leave it to him to talk about the product.
Great, thank you. Gil.
Hi. So when I'm not busy rescuing rasa, I'm in charge of the Maryland Development Center and a few other things. Just had a nice chat with a College Park professor who has invented an amazing technology for sealing wounds. And so that's sort of what I do is people call me and they explain their ideas and we try to figure out a way to work with them. So every day, 2 more.
Thank you. Hamid?
Gil, that's interesting. I've worked on sealing wound technology for the eyes. So if you want to talk about that, we could. Good afternoon. My name is Hamid Badi. I've been in the tech transfer space for over a decade now. I assist faculty members, physicians, and PIs in commercialization of their ideas. My background is in healthcare and the life sciences, med tech. Now I'm moving into AI and machine learning in healthcare.
Awesome. Jared.
Hi, I'm Jared Myers. I'm the co-founder of Augment Health. We're basically helping people with spinal cord injuries who use indwelling urinary catheters to switch off of urine collection bags, which can be embarrassing and have a lot of problems with them. Also a recent Georgia Tech biomedical engineering graduate. And yeah, right now I'm based on Long Island, New York.
Wonderful. Welcome. Let's see, Jennifer.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Yu, and I'm still a high school senior, and I'm here because I'm interested in entrepreneurship and because I'm actually a research intern trainee, and I think this presentation will help me with getting to know more about startups. So yeah, that's fine.
Awesome, thank you. Matteo?
Hello, everyone. My name is Matteo, and I'm the co-founder of DMP Health. And what we're creating a facility to help individuals between the ages of 18 and 34 become the best versions of themselves by promoting physical training through our healthcare model.
Great, thank you. Rasa?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rasa. When I'm not getting lost in Cape Cod, I'm currently the project manager for NextStep Robotics. So I work with Brad, and over the last few years, I've been helping early stage med tech startup companies with business development and dabbling in technical development too.
Awesome. Tristan?
Hi, everyone. My name is Tristan. I'm the co-founder of BecTech. We're a spin out from Hopkins, developing insect detection and monitoring solutions, mostly aimed at mosquitoes and ticks for public health agencies.
Great, thank you. Veronica? All right, Wayne?
Hi, Wayne Sternberger. As Ellen indicated, I'm one of the co-founders of Blocks and Op Incorporated, spin out from Hopkins APL and Hopkins Medicine. And we're doing a commercialization of a new patient monitor that will in real time give you quantitative information about the density and the location of neural blocks, which is something that has not been in place since regional blocks and neural blocks have been started to be used 135 years ago.
Great, thank you. Josef?
Hi, my name is Josef. I'm a BME graduate student at Hopkins, and I'm working with Optosurgical, which is a early stage R&D medtech startup. And we're trying to develop a imaging device to help endocrine surgeons.
Awesome, thank you. So I think That's everyone. So yes, let's get started. So yes, today's speaker is Brad Hennessie. He is the founder and CEO of NextStep Robotics, a company that's commercializing the first effective treatment option for foot drop to help stroke survivors. And so today's topic, I wanted to do this topic because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially coming out of the research space, want to focus on the technologies, but the decisions about the logistics early on can have consequences even many years later. Things like the type of entity you have, which state you incorporate in, the fees you need to pay, equity, and so on. And NextStep Robotics is probably the farthest company that's farthest along at MDC. And so Brad has a lot of perspective about how these early decisions shape the company later on. So I will hand it to Brad. So yes, Brad, please tell us about yourself and NextStep Robotics.
Sure. So as Neo said, Brad, thanks to everyone for coming today. I hope you can get a little bit of insight with the information I share for you. One thing that I just want to say is, one company is one company, and there's not a clear defined pathway that every company should take, and it's got to suit your own needs and things like that. But I hope with my experience, as well as some of the other people on here, we can kind of help guide those decisions along and things and make that decision making process a little bit easier for you. So I started actually with my co-founders as an undergraduate intern. When I was an undergrad at Towson University studying exercise science, I wanted to be a physical therapist. There was an internship opportunity at the Baltimore VA with the Maryland Exercise Robotics Center of Excellence. I thought that sounds cool, exercise and robots, right? Let's go check this out. What I found out is they were doing some pretty cutting edge stroke research, stroke rehabilitation research, both on the exercise front as well as developing new technologies. And even more impressive was the effectiveness that those trials were starting to get in things. So while we started to see the robotic device that we were developing was efficacious and things like that, and I became a full-time employee and was growing as a study coordinator and things, I started to get a little bit discouraged with the lack of all the great research having any kind of impact on what physical therapy is for stroke rehab. And as in that frustration, at the same time I went back to school to get my my MHA, got bit by the business bug after taking my first business class during the MHA. A bunch of light bulbs turned on for me with that. And so followed on with an MBA right after that, and then started to look into, okay, what can we do to accelerate this translational process? How can we get good research into the hands of clinicians to actually be helpful to people, not just research subjects? And that's when I started asking questions about how to do those types of things. Learned about, okay, well, first thing you got to do is, with me and my co-founders learned that, okay, you have to actually generate the IP and create the IP and submit it and disclose it to the university, file the IP and things like that. So we went down that pathway and started to, and my co-founders were the inventors of the device, so they filed for the IP. We met with OTT. And that's where things, and that the OTT stands for the Office of Technology Transfer. Pretty much every university that has research has an Office of Technology Transfer, because there's constantly things being invented and IP being filed at the university. And they have a lot of resources and a lot of connections in that office. So that's where things really started to kind of move forward for us. We were introduced to the ecosystem. We started to learn about, initially we learned about TEDCO, which is a fantastic Maryland early funding, probably the earliest funding you can get in the state for tech transfer from our universities. And then I ended up meeting Gil shortly after we we filed for our first grant through TEDCO. That's called a Maryland Innovation Initiative. And what they do is they give a little bit of money. And it's back when we did it was 115,000 for a 1-year project. I think it's gone up. Maybe it's 150 now. Is that right, Gil? Did it go up at all, or?
No, I think it's the same. You get
It's the same?
150 if you have 2 universities involved.
Okay, that's what it is. And so we got this grant, and that was really kind of the first project to take a research device that we had 4 positive clinical trials on that demonstrated that, even years after stroke, we can durably reverse foot drop in stroke patients. And so what foot drop is the inability to raise your toe while walking. It's caused largely by stroke, but many other health conditions cause it. Parkinson's disease, cerebral palsy in pediatrics, hip and knee replacements, about 5% of them end up with foot drop. So it's a very large problem that not a whole lot of people hear about. And that's largely because the way that they mitigate it now is successful. So what they do now, though, is they give a rigid brace that they strap onto the back of the leg and that goes under the foot, and they lock the patient's leg in. That means that they can't move their leg. It's immobile, obviously. And what that ends up teaching over time is learned disuse, and it doesn't provide any kind of therapeutic effect. So when patients take off the device, their toe drops down again, and they have the same mobility issues that they had when they first got it. And oftentimes their mobility issues actually get even worse because since they're locked in, they get a lot of muscle atrophy, and it actually increases the amount of fatigue that they get from walking and things. So that's why we decided to develop a technology to try to reverse that. And so we got the MII grant. We had a very large robotic system that had a controller that was about the size of a washing machine, and a 12-pound device that strapped onto the front of a patient's leg. It obviously had to be plugged into a wall for power. So it was very limited in its use, but it was effective, as I said, in our 4 positive clinical trials. So we had to figure out a way to turn that into a form factor that clinics could actually adopt. And what I had noticed while meeting with TEDCO and developing the initial business models for our grant with TEDCO was a lot of the rehab robotic devices that have gone onto market had no clinical data at all before raising funds and developing the device and things like that. And even worse, the cheapest one on the market was $70,000, and targeted at individual use rather than as a therapeutic tool for physical therapists to use. Well, most people who need a device like that are on disability. So they're very limited in being able to purchase a $70,000 to $120,000 mobility assist device. And even further, insurance companies aren't going to pay for it. Why would they pay for a $70,000 rewalk system if they can pay for a $2,500 Jazzy scooter that has a better battery life, is more effective in getting and helping their people get around their communities, and is actually just safer in general for them to use. So that's why we haven't seen all of those technologies, those lower body exoskeletons and things actually make it into the market successfully. There's no pathway for payment for those types of systems as of right now. So we wanted to develop a model that was very different. That was kind of the first decision that we wanted to make. We wanted to figure out, okay, how can we get this paid for? What's our price target? We met with physical therapists. We learned, okay, if we can get under the $20,000 mark, that's kind of ideal. We set a goal to try to be around 15. We're going to come in around 20. So, we're in that range. And with scalability, we can come down even further. So that gives us an opportunity to be at a price point that's more acceptable to clinics to buy. That's the other thing, is we want it to be a B2B model, business to business model, not a business to consumer model. Because again, a lot of these people are on disability. They can't pay the 20,000, forget the 70. So we needed to figure out, okay, how can this get reimbursed? And what we learned is, while the device itself might not necessarily be able to be reimbursed, the use of the device during physical therapy can be reimbursed. And even further, they can reimburse for a larger amount for their training, because it provides additional outcomes that aren't currently available with any tools that are on the market. So what that looks like is, right now, if they want to do ambulatory mobility training, what they call gait training, they have to bill for something called gait training. With a device like ours that has actually positive outcomes that can be measured objectively, we can bill for neuromuscular re-education. And that's exactly what our device does. What we learned through our research is, through high numbers of repetition of a very task-specific exercise, lifting the toe while walking, just walking on the treadmill is essentially what that looks like, taking a couple, thousands of steps over 18 sessions of training. And patients are able to produce a neuroplastic effect in the brain, actually gain new access to the muscles in the lower leg that are responsible for raising their toe. And then we sent them home. They came back 6 weeks later, or 6 months later. We were expecting to see how much they lost from training with us, and they actually continued to improve. So what that told us is that we weren't just having that desired neuroplastic effect, but they were actually using it, and they were reversing the muscle atrophy that they had in their leg, and they were getting into their communities. They were telling us they were going grocery shopping on their own for their first time in years, and things like that. So back to, we got the MII grant with that business model targeting clinics, not individuals. And that's when we were introduced to the Maryland Development Center. Largely what our needs were at the time was to miniaturize the device and portabilize it, to make it something that could be used over ground, wasn't restricted just to treadmill training and things like that. We needed a lot of engineering help. That's why we were introduced to Gil, and MDC had just gotten started at that time. And we kind of meshed very well with what our goals and objectives were. Like I said, my frustrations with technology transfer resonated really well with Gil, and we expressed a lot of the same issues and concerns and really frustrations with the lack of getting these technologies out there from all the great research that happens. So anyway, we were able, within 4 months, Rasa was actually part of the MDC engineering team at the time, and we built our first portable device, put it on 10 stroke patients, walked them around in the office, pitched to the Maryland Momentum Fund, and I got my first funding about 6 months after launching the company from that group. First funding outside of TEDCO, and first kind of, more VC. That's where I learned what due diligence meant. So don't worry, you're gonna be run into things, and you're gonna have to Google what terms mean and stuff, even as basic as due diligence. Gil knows that aspect of things too. But it's really, while there's times where I felt like I didn't know what I was doing, and now I kind of feel like I know what I'm doing. But anyway, so we did the due diligence process. We further refined the device. We found a contractor down in Houston, Texas, of a bunch of NASA engineers, because our next step was to reduce the weight as much as possible. What better to do that than some NASA engineers? And very successfully, we had our first prototype device. After that, we were able to, before the prototype device, based on the Momentum Fund, we were able to raise additional funding, both locally as well as some West Coast money out at Vancouver, with an individual who actually had a stroke and had foot drop, who we had met a couple years before. After a week of training with him, we were able to give him his first volitional ankle movement in 17 years. So that was kind of the easiest kind of pitch and sell for investment there. We just had to kind of sell the valuation at that point. But they came in, they supported us. We were able to get and all the kind of information we would need to put together a strong grant proposal to NIH, and we were successful in getting a U44 cooperative agreement with NINDS with NIH. That's we just got phase 2, so total worth of that was 5.4 million. And that's really what we've done a lot of is leveraging our wins. So anytime that we had a win, we tried to leverage it into something else. You'll hear us saying a lot of, it's easier to raise money when you don't need it than when you do. And I can tell you that's true. So really leveraging wins is the best way to do that. You get a grant, go raise some capital off of that. You don't have to raise as much capital then. You can take that non-dilutive funding and hold on to more equity, but you can really add accelerant to what you're trying to produce by doing that. I know I kind of went all over the place there, Neo, but I think that probably touches on most things there.
Yes, thank you so much for very detailed background. So you saw so you were involved.
So tornado warning.
Oh,
sorry.
okay. Yeah, so you've been involved you had been involved in the project for a long time before the company was created. You saw there was a need. You try to figure out if it could be a business in that you could get you figure out where the payments would come from and things like that. So when and how did you decide to actually form a company and incorporate?
Yeah, so we decided to form the company when we actually met the group from Vancouver for the first time. After training David for the first time, they expressed interest in forming a company and making an investment to help do that. Terms weren't really what we were looking for to move that forward, so we backed away and started doing our own due diligence and research and learning how to do that process.
Right.
And largely what we decided to do from there was just start simple, make an LLC. That's the simplest company formation that you can do. It's also the cheapest. If you start looking into C Corps and things, you have to have additional bylaws, SEC filings. You have to have regular board meetings and things like that. So we kept it in the LLC for simplicity's sake, but we did eventually end up converting to a C Corp at the request of our investors. And it is really kind of a painless process to turn into a C Corp later. So I would definitely stick with start with an LLC. It's cheap and easy. You don't even really need legal counsel to be involved initially to get that done. And then once you get a little bit of money, once you get the interest from the VCs, that's when you can make the C Corp, which makes you a bit more of an investable structure.
Great. And how did you choose which state to form the company? Because you hear a lot that about Delaware corporations.
So this is an interesting one in Maryland. So yeah, there's pretty much everyone tries to form a Delaware corp, right? It's our own, U.S. based little tax haven, right? But Maryland has a lot of resources for new startups, young entrepreneurs, and things. But a lot of them have the requirement that you have to be a Maryland registered company. Not all of them, but some of them do. And it really would hurt that process and some of those initial fundings and kind of the low hanging fruit. I don't want to say easy, but some of those fundings that are a little bit more likely to get you just because you're Baltimore based and things like that. That's why we ultimately ended up going with a Maryland company. So while from a tax benefit thing, it's not as strong as Delaware, from an early fundraising thing, that was important.
Right. And also I know that if you want to apply for these grants like the SBIR from the NIH or NSF, you need to be incorporated at that point. And so how did you go about getting things like the DUNS number, SAM registration, the SBC ID, things like that?
Yeah. So hold on 1 second. I got a little friend here that's needing help.
Working from home.
Now this is great. He discussed a great timeline of events of how his company went from university to startup.
Yeah.
How many? Do you know how many years it took him to do this?
Sorry about that.
Hey, Hamid has a
About
question.
4.5.
Mhm.
Oh, thanks.
We started in April of 2017. But realistically, I was working about 10 to 15 hours a week for 2 years before that time, kind of doing formations and stuff. And Nao, can you ask your question one more time? Just to
Oh,
make sure.
yes. So, yeah, just additional logistics of the company. Like, for example, if you're applying for the SBIR from, places like the NIH or NSF, you have to have all these like the DUNS number, SAM registration, SBC ID, and things like that. How did you go about doing all of that? And did you do that yourself?
I did do all of that myself, and it's really really straightforward. And there's really no need to pay someone to do those things for you. And even after you register, you get bombarded by emails talking about that you're going to expire. You use us to help re-register your SAM account and things. Re-registering SAM takes about 5 minutes, but they'll charge you $300 to click a couple buttons for you. But so it's a lot simpler than they try to make it seem. You literally just go to the websites. There's a button that says register for your small business certificate, register for your SAM, some of them take several weeks to even, a month or two to get. So it's something that you want to take care of early on, so that when you're going for your grant application and things, you don't miss the grant deadline and have to go for the next cycle just because you didn't get your SAM registration back in time. Those are the kinds of things you want to try to avoid.
Yes, I have missed a deadline because of SAM registration. They didn't like my suite number and I had to start over. So the first time it can take weeks, but after that, it's really easy. Do not pay people to do this. Yes, and then but there are some fees involved in when you initially incorporate. I guess when you renew your registration with the state every year. So how did you decide who pays for that?
My initial funding and all was co-founders. So that's how I decided to launch the company. We got to a point where I was becoming uncomfortable with not starting. I was getting really excited about it. So I approached my co-founders and said, if we can pull together money to support me salary wise. I took a salary hit when I left the university. But if we can support me salary wise, let me see if I can make something happen in a year. And then let's go forward. So I had kind of enough money to do those type of activities. Most of them, they're like at most $300 and things. And so it's not a huge amount of money to start just your basic LLC.
Yep. Sounds good. And how did you choose the name of your company and your logo?
So the name.
What are things you should consider when you're trying to decide those things?
So the first thing you do when you're trying to name your company is you go to GoDaddy.com and you come up with your list of names and you see which ones have an available domain, because you got to have a website. And you got to have a website that makes sense for your name. So we tried about, probably 100 or so different names, different variations of what we have now, and some things that were just totally off the wall, right? Made up words. And so we just landed on something that we liked enough, and thought that, it drove the point across initially on what we were trying to develop, and also kind of it made you say, hey, what's that? kind of thing. And for the logo, this is actually one of my favorite stories. So I found this this website online called squadhelp.com. That's SQUAD help.com. And what that website does is it creates competitions to make business names, logos, websites, catch lines, mission statements. So you go on that website, and for a few $100s, I think for a logo, it might be like $450 or $500 now. But you describe your company, you describe what you're looking for. You can even pick colors and say, these are the colors we want to use and things. And then people just start giving you logos. And so if you go to a graphic design firm, they're going to charge you usually between $2,500 to $5,000, and you'll get maybe 3 logos to choose from. You'll get, to be able to go back and forth and to tweak things. But we got 60 logos for $450. About 20 of those were good, and about 5 of them were great. It also lets you go back and forth with the creators that allow you to change things up. And that's how we ended up with our logo. And we get a lot of compliments on our logo and everything. And it's a very professional logo. At the end, the creators have to actually sign something that says the person that posts the competition gets full ownership rights. If they accept the money from winning the competition, they're accepting that the creator of the competition gets full rights to it.
Awesome.
But but like I said, it's not just logos there. You can do business names and stuff and the business name competition is maybe $100 or something like that.
Awesome. And how did you decide how to distribute the equity when you first started? And did you have to change anything when you converted from LLC to C Corp?
So the way we did equity is essentially we looked at all the background research and the work that had gone into produce the technology itself. And we said, okay, let's go ahead and look at how much effort each of the 3 inventors put into it. How can we spread that out fairly in a way that, everyone is agreeable to? I will also say that me and my founders are all very close, and we've worked together for a very long time. So that process was, easier than it can be, I'm sure. And then so I started with them initially, and then I was the one person that wasn't on the IP, but I was the person that was going to leave my university job and take, the majority of the risk, other than the little bit of a financial risk that they took investing in me. So I said, okay, this is what I'll do is basically I'll dilute you guys to a number that I feel comfortable starting out at, and let me know if that sounds good to you. We had a little bit of back and forth. Things didn't change too much. Maybe I should have pushed for a little more. But everyone was basically happy with where they were. I was happy because this was I was very excited about it, and they were putting a lot of trust in me to try to take this thing forward. And then as far as with the conversion and things, no, we didn't have to change our equity structure for the founders or anything like that. But we have taken dilutive funding. We've taken equity investments. To date, everything's been in a convertible note round. We're actually going to be doing an equity round this fall so that we can convert all of those notes into equity, stop gaining interest on those things. But yeah, early on with the investments, you're going to look at debt investments. Often convertible notes is what you're going to do for that. And then those are effectively, they're a loan that can be either paid off or they can be converted into equity.
Yeah, and speaking of finances, so you need to, so when you first incorporate the company, you need to have a business bank account attached to it. So how did you choose your bank? Did you compare different banks or?
I was pretty haphazard about that, not gonna lie. I was just said, okay, where's a good reputable bank? And I just landed on Capital One. I should have been more a little bit more detailed in that, but I had a couple checks in my hand and I needed to get them into an account and move forward. So I ended up with Capital One. They were okay. I had we left them because they're too big. Customer service for someone as small as me just wasn't great. So I went with them initially. We use Fulton Bank now. I've been extremely happy with Fulton Bank. Our main contact there, his name is Brett Schreiber. He's really pushing forward with trying to help create very unique funding opportunities. They look at doing lines of credits and things like that for startups in Baltimore, and they look at risk and things very differently than any other bank that I talk to. In terms of they value grants and things like that, and they value IP coming out of a university. They know, okay, that's if it's a university IP, you're going to at least have the backing of the university to push this thing forward. So that de-risks you rather than just taking your own personal IP or something like that. So Fulton Bank is a great target. They're really focused on, I sound like a commercial, but they really have been really good. And that was the other thing that while I was dealing with Capital One, at the same time, I knew it was going to be important. We were starting to look into hiring people and things. So I wanted to try to set up a line of credit or early on to some kind of to build, business credit, just like you got to do that for yourselves, so your own personal credit before you can get big loans and things. They were willing to do a line of credit with us, and we were actually we had no issues at all getting into the first round of the PPP loan when all that happened, because we made a focus on, okay, let's build that banking relationship early so that we have someone in our corner to help us with those things.
Awesome. Yes. And if anyone wants to connect with Brett, I know him, so we can connect you if you're interested. And they're really trying to tailor banking and getting loans and things like that to startups. Awesome. And you talked earlier about why you decided to join MDC. Were they the only startup studio or incubator or co-working space you looked at? Did you look at any others?
Yeah, I pretty much looked at all of them. I was actually really close to signing an agreement with one of them, but when Gil and I met, thank God we met when we did. So the real kind of decision maker is the other co-working spaces and things like that are just that. They are really, focused on providing a desk. They say things like, oh, well, we provide access to C-level executives for mentoring and things. Ask them what the background is of those C-level executives and things. They're pretty much never involved in biotech or anything. It's like I asked the one and it was like something with the garment industry and stuff. I'm like, okay, well, I'm robotics and biotech. I don't know how much help that's going to be. But basically we ended up with MDC because we weren't just purchasing a desk. They were actually going to invest in us. They were actually going to help push us forward. They actually had experience working with medical devices. They actually knew how to contact the FDA. They knew all of those things already. So it was really kind of a night and day. It was a very easy decision once I learned about MDC and learned what they do. And I'm very thankful for that. And Gil and Rasa and the others that were there were absolutely fantastic. Like I said, to develop a portable prototype for a system like this in 4 months, I was more than impressed with that process.
Awesome. And a few other logistical things. So did you?
Can I ask a quick, just one quick?
Oh yeah, of course, yes. Oh, that's your hand.
It'll be real quick now. Brad, are you interested in licensing technologies within the robotic and physical therapy space just to increase your product portfolio?
Absolutely, and we're running a MIPS proposal now for an upper extremity device.
That's what I have. I have an upper extremity device I'd like to run by you.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Connect with me afterwards, and yeah.
Thank you. Sorry now. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. So Brad, did you hire an accountant to deal with payroll and taxes? Did you get things like business insurance? Because it's hard to know. Like when I started business, I was aware that a lot of these things existed that I could pay for, but I wasn't sure which ones you should pay for and which ones you shouldn't need to pay for.
Right. So the other one I'll talk about is legal. Finding a law firm too. I had a really hard time finding an accountant that would even return my phone calls. So I was really limited on mind you, I also formed in April, so that might have also had a little bit of a timing for that. But so I ended up working with oh man, I can't name Wyrick and Cronin. They're out in the Lutherville area. That's who returned my phone call, and they were actually fantastic with helping me initially form things and stuff like that, and setting up different filings and stuff. They were really good. The only reason why we don't use them now is because we got the large federal grant. So we went with a company that has a lot more experience doing knowing about, the accounting procedures that are required for federal grants like that. And who we use now is DHG, at Dixon Hughes Goodman. And we were introduced to Brian Israel. He's another great contact in the area that if anyone's looking for an accountant, I would be glad to introduce you to. For legal help, I did a lot of research before trying to pick out who I wanted to use for that. I ended up finding a law firm that was actually already well connected with the University of Maryland system. One of their partners is on a couple of the boards for the School of Medicine and things like that. So I reached out to them and told them that, I'm coming out of the University of Maryland. We've got this new technology. I want to come talk to you about forming the business and things. They were extremely receptive. And they actually gave us a very good deal on delayed fees and things like that early on. So definitely, when you meet with a law firm, talk about delayed fees, talk about what information do you need from me to be comfortable with coming out with a delayed fee option to help with your legal help and everything. And then what was the other one?
Oh, business insurance.
Business insurance. Yeah, that one, it's you have to. It's you can't sign a lease without it. You can't do anything without business insurance. And it's actually early on, it's dirt cheap. It's almost as cheap as like renter's insurance early on when it's just you. So go for it. They're pretty much everyone I talked to in that for that was basically the same. So I ended up just going with a brokerage group who found me the best deal.
Awesome, thank you. And is there anything you can think of that you'd go back and do differently, knowing what you know now?
What would I do differently? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the most important thing I did was make decisions. And move forward. You're not going to make the perfect decision every time. Some decisions will be more right than others in hindsight, but it's not, the pathway to get from where we started, which was nothing, to where we are, it's not a straight, linear line. It goes back and forth. You make some decisions that it's more important that you made a decision to get the process done to get to the next milestone. That's really what's the key there, and try to focus less on, okay, what could I have done differently? At that point, it doesn't matter. But I guess what I would say is, do your due diligence with contractors and things like that, and really pay attention and use that legal help once you have some money to really to review all of your contracts and things. Because we have had contractors try to squeeze things by us in terms of IP ownership and things like that, even to the point where, we had a contractor that was actually going to be an investor. And after talking to legal and talking to our current investors, the contract was written in such a way that we pulled away from them completely. And they were going to be, you know, what we thought was going to be a good investment and a good partner moving forward. So really, you know, use legal to help vet those contracts, make sure there's nothing strange in there, because people will try to take advantage of you. That's just the bottom line of it. So just you don't have to be a genius about it, but be a little bit savvy and a little bit cautious. But more importantly, make the decision and move forward and make progress.
Great, thank you so much. So we're almost out of time. So Brad, to finish off, I'd like to ask, what are 3 concrete things early stage entrepreneurs should do to get up and running with their company formation?
All right, so I'll give you 3 concrete and then one
abstract.
Less, yeah. Right. So the first one is talk to as many potential end users as possible. If you heard about iCorps, you heard about those things. They all teach the Steve Blank lean startup method, and pretty much any business, a consultant, and everything, they're all going to come and regurgitate the same information. Go talk to as many customers as possible. That keeps you from developing features versus developing what you really need for a minimal viable product. So talk. And again, the second one is talk to everyone about what you're doing. You don't know who people know to make the connections with. We've made some connections with very high level people that I didn't anticipate. I wouldn't even think would even take the time of day to speak with me. I'm talking, you know, people running venture firms with $1 billion in assets. Even if they don't invest in you, and this was like, you know, 6 months into starting the company, I found out later I was talking to a guy with $1 billion in new money in a fund. And it's, you know, we weren't in the same space, but he looked at my pitch deck. He gave me advice and things like that. People will surprise you. Let's see, what's the other concrete one is I guess it's just make decisions. Get stuff done. You can overplan everything, and it goes back to the, you know, talking to your customers. You can, there's a concept called death by perfection, right? When you're trying to create the perfect product, you don't have to have a perfect product. You have to have a good enough product. That's generally what pretty much everyone starts with, a good enough product to go forward. Gil has some great stories about creating a product that's good enough. And you don't find out what is good enough until you start talking to your customers. Otherwise, it's just purely assumptions. But you have to prove those assumptions and figure out what really is needed to get to the next stage. And it could save you a ton of time and a ton of money. For my abstract one, I'll say mental health. You know, don't be afraid to you know, have a therapist in your corner. You might, even if you don't need one now, you might at some point in time. I can tell you, you know, there's a lot of things that cause a lot of anxiety, especially as your team grows. You start looking at what your burn rate is, and it starts becoming numbers that are like, okay, this is on. There's way too many zeros at the end of this burn rate for me to go to sleep tonight, kind of things. And you know, work on your mental health, do things that help calm you, and get strategies to help with things like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brad. Yeah, before we finish, does anyone have any burning questions for Brad or comments?
Round of applause from my end.
Yay. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Neo.
Of course. Awesome.
Yeah, and you know, anybody who wants to get in touch with me, contact Neo. I'm I'm pushing next step, but I'm a float all boats kind of guy. I know that if we can elevate the ecosystem, it's going to help elevate me as well. I've brought my investors have come down and they've invested in a few other MDC companies and things, and that's really how we build this ecosystem. Is, you know, it's most of these investors and things have a lot more money than putting into one company. They're looking for more companies. So make those introductions, make connections with each other, and we gotta drive the whole ecosystem together.
Wonderful, thank you. Josef, did you have a question?
No, just clapping my hand, I think.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you so much.
Matteo, can I make one comment about
please.
Brad? So one sort of my favorite Brad story was in the beginning. Rasa and the team built this portable robot which had wires hanging out and it was using DeWalt batteries. It was kludgy, would be kind, but it worked. And my favorite Brad story is he got to go give a pitch at the Momentum Fund. Is that the one, Brad?
Yep.
And he wore the device. So if you're the CEO of a company, your primary job is sales. You're selling either your technology, your company, yourself, and wearing the device. When I heard Brad had worn the device, I thought, this guy has it. You got to.
Part of that was Gil suggested it, and I didn't quite realize how much he was joking. But I would have done it anyway, and you're absolutely right. It's initially you're selling yourself. Investors initially invest in the founders, and you'll hear all kinds of stories, and you can read books written by founders of very successful companies about, you know, them meeting with investors with their first idea, and candidly just investors, the one I'm thinking of, telling them that their idea was shit, and come back to me when you have a new idea. And that one is actually Reddit. That's how Reddit got formed. The founders of that had an idea. They went and they pitched to an investor. He hated the idea, and he said, "Come back to me when you have a new one." A couple months later, they made Reddit. So that's that. They're investing in the founders initially.
Wonderful. So thank you so much, everyone. So next time, so our next meetup is on August 19th at 5 p.m. Dr. Amir Mambachi, who's a good friend of mine and my unofficial co-founder, he's an assistant professor of neurosurgery and biomedical engineering at Johns Hopkins. He'll be talking about strategic partnerships and collaborating with research institutions. So I hope I will see you again next month. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, Nao.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.